Welcome everyone. This is the Indian Express of 23rd August 2022 and I will explain this news in 3 steps. First, why is the news? Second, what is the news? And third is what can be the future prospects of the news. So let's get started with our first news, which is IS man plotting attack in India held, says Russia. So why is this news? This news is because earlier this year there was a remark on Prophet Muhammad in India. That is why the Arab world and the Muslim countries were very much hurt, and this Islamic State is now planning to take revenge, which is bad, but this is their ideology. So now Russia's Federal Security Service has held this terrorist, and we will see what is the news. Russia's Federal Security on Monday it has said that it has detained Islamic State terrorist who was planning to carry out a suicide attack against a representative of ruling circles of India. So this is a key point. It was trying to attack against ruling circles of India, which is politicians, government, especially over the comments on Prophet Muhammad earlier this year. Who is this suspect? This suspect is a national of a Central Asian country, and he was recruited in Turkey. So he is now a member of international terrorist organization, which is Islamic State, and it's also banned in Russia. So this is a news, and we will see what India will react to this news, because and obviously it will be a matter of fact how India reacts to this. Now next comes our news, which is this news. Supreme Court dissolves football COA, which is Committee of Administrators, paves way for FIFA to lift suspension. So as you know, why is this news? Because FIFA have banned Indian football. It have sanctioned against, you can call it in a way, it has sanctioned against Indian football. So now what Supreme Court is doing? Supreme Court on Monday, in a verdict that paves the way for India's football return to the international fold after a brief period of isolation, what Supreme Court has done, it has dissolved the 3-member Committee of Administrators and has appointed in May to look after the daily affairs of AIFF. So it has said that the decision was taken in national interest so that the suspension is lifted and the players who are playing football are not affected. So what will be the main in future, because India is trying to do everything in order to get these sanctions lifted, but FIFA will take a final call on lifting the sanctions against Indian football, and it has convened to the sports ministry that it will recommend to the Bureau of FIFA Council, which is its decision making body, and it will recommend it for its decision that it must suspend the sanction. So if the world body is satisfied with the court verdict, so we will see whether in the future FIFA takes such call or not. So our next page is Uttar Pradesh. Okay, also this is a news that came in yesterday's paper. Sisodiya should be given Bharat Ratna, but he is being hounded, says Kejriwal. So You know what is the case? This is that Sisodia is alleged over irregularities in state's policy that was based on liquor. Now, both the sides, BJP and Kejriwal, BJP and Aam Aadmi Party's Kejriwal, they are both uh, having clashes, and they are alleging each other. So, what Sisodia has said that BJP asked him to join now, 3 days after CBI raid at his residence in connection with a case registered against him and several other excise officers. What is the case? Case is over alleged corruption in the rollout of Delhi's liquor policy. So he said that BJP has reached out and offered to drop all cases if he joined BJP. Now, BJP leaders accused Sisodia of fabrication. He says that the cases against him are false. Sisodia also claimed through tweets that BJP also offered him to make him the party's chief ministerial candidate for Delhi, and added that he will not bow in front of corrupt and schemers. So this is the news. We will see how all this happening will take its own turn. Now, this is also a news which is important. China to issue visas for Indian students. So, why is this a news? Because every country issues visas, but this is important because China has not yet issued visas, not for all the students but only for Indian students. So it had issued visas for Pakistanis way months before, but when it comes to Indian students, it is not taking steps. But now, after 2 year delay due to pandemic, it is now issuing visas for Indian students. So good that they came back on track, but it's late. Now, this is also news. Supreme Court agrees to hear plea against its order on PMLA validity. So, what is PMLA? It is Prevention of Money Laundering Act, which was passed in 2002, and it was to prevent the money laundering that occurs in our country. So, what it has said that it is ready to uphold the constitutional validity of Prevention of Money Laundering Act 2002, which is amended from time to time, including those dealings with the powers of ED with regard to arrest, search, attachment and seizure in money laundering offences. So this is also a news that court underlined that principles of innocence of the accused offender is regarded as a human right, but that presumption can be interdicted by a law made by parliament legislature. So it's talking about that whenever such cases occur, the person is arrested in a second, so you can call within a day. But how this principle of innocence of the accused, or you can call the offender, which is regarded as human right, how this will be taken, how this decision will be taken, will be directed by law, which is made by parliament, or you can call legislature. So Supreme Court also refused to accept the contention that procedure followed by ED in registering the enforcement case information report is opaque, arbitrary and violative of constitutional rights of an accused. So it's also trying to say that it does not accept that the case that is being FIR'd against the accused, or you can call the person who has violated, it said that it is not a violation of constitutional rights, and it also do not accept that the procedure that are followed under this Prevention of Money Laundering Act is draconian. What court said is that ECIR cannot be equated with an FIR, that supplying an ECIR in every case to the person concerned is not mandatory. It is enough if the ED at the time of arrest discloses the grounds of such arrest. So as you know, in FIR what occurs, you have to tell the person who is accused that why is he being arrested. Now Supreme Court is saying that it is not mandatory for the person to know before arrest what he has done, but if the enforcement directorate at the time of arrest, when the person is being arrested by ED, if it discloses the grounds of such arrest, it is enough. So we will see what action, or you can say what is it that Supreme Court is trying to hear the plea against its order. We will look at it. So moving forward to our explained page, first news is regarding Pakistan, which is not so important. So we'll see our next news, which is ways to privatize PSBs. So what is PSBs? PSBs is Public Sector Bank. Okay, so why is this news? This news is because since past 10 years, these public sector banks have struggled, you can say, with the high levels of NPAs, which is non-performing assets, which also reduced the bank's profitability, and it also undermined their ability to help in India's growth. So that is why they are being privatized, you can say, in order to make them more efficient and profit making entities. Government is trying to give their ownership to private enterprises. So this is a article which is about ways to privatize public sector banks. So we will see, should India privatize nationalized banks wholesale and rapidly, or take a gradual approach? Data show private banks have generated profits, but public sector banks have been more inclusive, lent more to crucial sectors. So it's about whether this should be rapid, it means fast, or whether it should be a gradual approach. So India completed 53 years of banks nationalization last month amid a policy debate over whether it is now time for a summary reversal of a momentous decision that Prime Minister Indira Gandhi took in July 1969. Is there a case for turning over all public sector banks to the private sector overnight? So, first time in the history of our nation, the first time the privatization occurred with the public sector bank, it was during Indira Gandhi regime, which was in July 1969. So it's talking that whether there is a case to turn all the public sector banks to private sector in overnight, or perhaps for an alternative that might involve privatizing some while keeping others in public sector and stretching out the process of privatization. So what does it depends on? It depends on policy goals which we have in our sight. So what is the context of our debate? It is over the past decade, the public sector banks have struggled with high levels of non-performing assets, which have eroded the bank's profitability and has restricted their ability to finance India's growth needs. So because of these NPAs, the bank's profitability have been eroded, and also because the profitability is eroded, that's why they are now unable to finance India's growth needs. In dire cases, government have to recapitalize public sector bank, triggering demands that instead of wasting taxpayers' money on recapitalization, government should simply sell the bank off to the private sector. So it's talking that do not waste the taxpayer money on recapitalizations and sell them to private sector. So what would be the benefit for government? It would reduce the finance burden on the government, and it would also ensure that these public sector banks become more efficient and profit making entities under private ownership. So it has now been argued. What is the Union Budget 2021 and 2022 shows, which is a recent Union Budget? It shows that it has announced its decision to start by privatizing two public sector banks. Now, total and rapid privatization, a recent paper, it was published by University of Columbia. It argued that all public sector banks should be privatized and government should move as rapidly as politically feasible. So this is the suggestion that NCAER paper by these persons have given, considering that this might however be politically difficult for any government to do this. They suggested a middle path of privatizing all PSBs except the biggest State Bank of India. So as you know, many times this become a great issue even for elections too, because if a government does that, they will lose their vote, because there's a craze about government and working for the government, and if all these public sector banks became private, the people who work and who are aspiring to work there, they lose hope, and that's why this conflict occur. In principle, moving forward, in principle, the case for privatization we have made to all PSBs including SBI, but we recognize that within the Indian economic framework and political ethos, the foreseeable future, no government will want to be without a single PSB in its portfolio. They have write in this paper, which is named. Now they're talking that these private banks will contribute more toward extending loans and higher share deposits. So they're talking about that it will benefit them, but now we will see cautious gradual approach. Other experts argue against rapid privatization. So now what is the other side of this too? This is that paper was titled Privatization of Public Sector Bank and Alternative Perspective. It was by members of RBI Banking Research Division. What does it said? It said that PSBs are more socially relevant in India. So it said that point of nationalizing private banks in 1969 was to reach out to those sections of society and economy that were typically ignored by private sector banks. But now what is the reversal? It has found that PSBs are far ahead of private banks in servicing rural India. It's saying that the public banks have more branches and ATMs in rural India. Public banks also do the heavy lifting when it comes to financial inclusion. Private sector banks accounted for just 1.3 crore to the total almost 46 crore beneficiaries of PMJDY, which is Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana. So they're talking that these private banks reach to the rural people more efficiently than private banks. Now what is talk more? It said that public sector banks are most cost efficient. So it's a all in one. It said that cost efficiency is what? Cost efficiency is efficiency that gives a measure of how close a bank's cost is to what a best practice bank cost would be for producing the same bundle of output under the same condition. So it's talking that the best, it's comparing that an ideal bank and a normal bank. If a normal bank is very close to ideal bank, it's saying that cost efficiency is good. PSBs are more useful to the economy. It's saying that because PSBs extend loans when the economy is in cyclical downturn. This is crucial because a downturn is when new loans are most needed to put the economy back on the growth trajectory, because as you know, there's so many people who want to expand their business, who want to give their business a new life, so they take loans and they invest in their business and then get prosperous and then pay the loan. So this loan, and you can call the credit, is very important to the growth of Indian economy, and they're saying that public sector banks do it very well. So more, okay, so this was all. There were two sides of both the banks. Also, which is a line which the recent research will suggest that private ownership alone does not automatically generate economic gains in developing countries, and a more cautious and nuanced evaluation of privatization is required. This article also recommends a gradual approach to privatization, says the paper. So this article was about having both the sides of privatization, and now it is in the hands of government has to decide whether they will do it gradually, whether they will do it, or whether not, or whether they will do it in a rapid manner. So we will see, going to economy page. This is Sensex news, which is not important. This is defaulters, FinMin tweaks over overseas investment rules. So as you know, why the news? Because there are many willful defaulters who have their eyes on every single bank. Be it, you may have heard of many names such as Nirav Modi and all that. So these are the willful defaulters. Now Finance Ministry is being more strict and it tweaks overseas investment rules. So what is the rule? Any Indian resident who has been classified as a willful defaulter or is under investigation by CBI, ED or SFIO, which is Serious Frauds Investigation Office, will have to obtain a no objection certificate from his or her bank, regulatory body or any investigative agency before making any overseas financial commitment or disinvestment of overseas assets. So what does that mean? That means that if you are a willful defaulter, or even if you are accused of a willful defaulter, you have to take a certificate. What certificate? It is a no objection certificate from bank or any agency which is investigating against you before making any investment or disinvestment of foreign assets, which is overseas assets. So so this rule provides that okay, I have explained this. Additionally, the new rules also prohibit Indian residents from making investment to foreign entities that are engaged in real estate activities, gambling or dealing with financial products. So you cannot invest in all that, in any real estate activity, gambling or any financial products, without the approval of RBI. So what this will act as, how this will benefit, it will make it difficult to willful defaulters to send funds out of the country, and they also make it easier for domestic corporates to invest abroad. So in order to do that, this government has passed some strict rules. It will benefit Indian citizens as well, because it is a taxpayer money which these willful defaulters take away from our country, and it's not 1,000, 2,000 or lakhs, it's like 4,000 crore rupees, which is like a sum of money of like lakhs of people. So now coming to world news, US commits to Afghan assets talk despite frustration with Taliban. So this is regarding US, and so I will tell you in very short what was the news. This is that US, which was in Afghan before the Taliban have captured this country, it was having an assets of like $7 billion, and it froze that assets when Taliban took power. Now it is committing to talk of assets despite having frustration with Taliban. And Russia war is going on. So also this is a military drill that is being taken out. South Korea, US begins biggest drill. So every country, this drill is basically practice that the army, navy and air force do in order to be efficient and grow. So what is the main issue? It is why they're doing this. I'll tell you in very short. US and South Korea have begun their biggest combined military training in years as the heightened defense posture against the growing North Korea's nuclear threat. So these are doing because of North Korea threat. Also Taiwan and China, and also India and India will also do exercise with US soldiers in October, you can say, and it is because of China's threat in the LAC region. So they will do it in October month in in Uttarakhand. Yes, in Uttarakhand, high altitude, in order to counterbalance the China's threat in Ladakh, LAC region. So this was a newspaper. Today's newspaper was not that long, it was short. You can read it as well and get the more you want.